Greetings, welcome to the studio. This evening I'm delighted to have as our guest Stuart Miller, street photography, who will be talking about his practice in depth, and he's kindly offered to give us a number of tips that he has been using over the years, so he'll be sharing his expertise. So please log into your account, either YouTube or Facebook, and you'll be able to ask questions and make comments, which will be dovetailed into the conversation as we go along. We won't have questions at the end, as is normal. So, in the usual way, if you could actually tell me where you're actually listening from, that would be absolutely great. If you actually put in the comments your town or your city, that would be absolutely fantastic, because that gives me a good idea where our audience is located. We've had people from over the pond, the US, India, Europe, and it's absolutely fantastic to know. So please tell me where you're listening in from. That will be great. I'll be making a few announcements before I introduce Stuart. So, over to sharing a screen. As you know, I give landscape photography workshops and holidays, and at the moment this is a fantastic time of the year in the UK, of course, to come over to actually do landscape photography because of spring. Now that the weather has broken, it's still a little bit chilly, but the sunlight is absolutely fantastic, and the vegetation, you can almost hear it grow. So it's absolutely magical. There is a number of holidays at the moment in May and June. Dartmoor, Gwythian, the Lizard Peninsula. I was in the Lizard Peninsula last week and it was absolutely stunning. I was along the coast and that was absolutely fantastic. It was brilliant. We're also going to Tintagel. That is connected to King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. And also the Wild West Coast. That's the Wild West Coast, the Atlantic coast of Cornwall. In addition to the holiday courses, I give workshops, and these are all for small groups between 1 and 4 people, and they're in different parts of Cornwall and Devon, across areas of outstanding natural beauty and national parks, which actually is fantastic. So do follow up. If you have any inquiries, do contact me, phone, email, whichever is easiest, and I will follow up. Okay, one last announcement. In terms of following me and following in conversation, you have a number of alternatives. You can follow me on Instagram, where I'll actually be giving the announcements first thing. You can also follow me on the YouTube channel. There, as soon as I timetable, schedule a talk, you'll get a notification. Or you can follow me on Eventbrite, and the same thing will happen there. You'll get a notification as soon as I put a new event. There will be new speakers either later this month or early next month. I'm working on a number of possibles at the moment, so keep you in touch. Okay. A couple of comments have come in. Ingrid, hello from Sweden. Ingrid, hello, good to see you. Hello, Sweden. That's excellent. And Philip Jones, howdy from Doncaster, north of England. That's fantastic, Philip. Thank you for being here. That's great. Absolutely brilliant. Cool. Okay, without further ado, I'm delighted to introduce to you Stuart Miller. Stuart.
Hi, Harry.
How are you?
Hi, everyone.
Excellent.
I'm very well, actually. Yeah, all good.
Great. Good to see you. Thank you so much for being a guest on the show. That's absolutely brilliant.
Pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Not at all. Excellent. So, your street photography caught my eye on Instagram. It really caught my eye. There's something about it that caught my eye, and of course, it's the use of a medium format camera, 2¼ square, that is unusual. That was one of Diane Arbus's choice of camera, and of course you don't see the 2¼ square very much, particularly for street photography. And I think that is what really caught my eye. So it would be great for you to tell us a bit of how you got into photography. What's your, in a nutshell, what's your journey?
I guess it started probably in my 20s, like a lot of us, maybe even earlier in my sort of late teens, just fiddling about with old 35mm cameras, film cameras then. But I think interrailing was when I first got the real bug for taking street photos. And I think I put on my blurb on the intro that I remember vividly being in the Vatican Square and with an old Pentax ME Super. And I saw an old couple sitting on a bench. They're probably in their early 80s, local couple in Vatican Square. And I just thought I made a lovely picture. So I went to take their picture, and the old lady swung at me with her walking stick. I had a rucksack on actually, because I was interrailing, and so I had to kind of hot-foot it out of there with the old chap chasing me. But that didn't put me off, but it did make me think that being discreet and finding a way of being discreet for street photography is actually quite important. So yeah, that's probably how it sort of started.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, I can totally relate to that. I had a very similar incident. I lived in London for many years, and that's when I started doing photography. And I wasn't too far away from Spitalfields, the market next to the City of London. So you had this contrast of, the financial center of the world and the market. And as I was photographing there, I was photographing somebody actually going through the bins, right? And of course, silly Harry had the great idea of why not, this would make a good photograph. Of course, the man actually just literally almost attacked me, And then I realized, well, if I were in his situation, well, probably I would do the same. And I think it's that thing about being that awareness of and empathy towards your subject, the people that you're photographing. And so you soon learn the lesson. So what is it that you do to actually, in a way, blend in?
Well, it's strange actually, because to a large extent the camera does it for you. Not the blending in bit, because this is actually my wife's Rolleiflex, but if you put this around your neck, which obviously you have to do when you're taking a photograph, you may as well. I saw somebody say it's like wearing an E-type Jaguar around your neck. I mean, you are kind of hiding in full view. You're not trying to pretend you don't have a camera hanging around, because you do. It's clear to all the world.
Yes.
The strange thing is that people, of course, these days, if you saw this, it's a camera. Of course, it's a camera, but you have the real benefit of, when you take the photo, you're looking down through the camera, so you're not actually being intrusive or challenging or confrontational by putting something to your eye, whether it's an iPhone or obviously or a conventional camera, because you're looking down. And eye contact in street photography is so important.
Yeah.
You're trying to avoid eye contact, but still maintain the subject in your peripheral vision, as you can see the scene emerging, and then you can kind of swing and take it. So I think it's strangely with the Rolleiflex, it's less about hiding, but more about people being maybe unaware of exactly what it is you're doing. So I will caveat that with something that I feel probably quite strongly about, is that on the very odd occasion where somebody might ask me, I think it's happened less than 5 times in umpteen years, did you just take my photo? I'll of course always say yes, but it's quite defensible, because if it's always either beautiful or positively funny, not patronizingly funny, then most people are totally fine with it. They don't actually mind, as long as you can say, well, actually, that was just beautiful. I mean, that was just a lovely picture. Then they actually compliment it. So on the odd occasion where you are kind of rumbled, but it happens so rarely weirdly, because you can see the camera. You're not kind of hiding it as Cartier-Bresson did under a handkerchief. You're actually, you're being very very upfront about the fact you are taking photos.
Absolutely. Yes, it's funny. I think I totally agree with you. That the thing about the DSLR is that it can be quite confrontational, and some people naturally, we now more than ever before, certainly, is you're breaking a certain taboo, that notion of private space. It can be perceived as being invasive, as being a kind of paparazzi or paparazzo. And people will react to that quite naturally because they want to look after their, on the one hand, there's their privacy, but also the fact that maybe they don't know what the photograph might be used for. So the context of looking after their who they are. We've got a question. Dragana, do you always ask people for consent? Good question, Dragana. Thank you.
Yeah, it is a good question actually, and the short answer is never. It's not something. I know the law has changed in France in the last 2 or 3 years, or maybe it's slightly more than that actually. But if you are going to use a street photograph in a publication or anything in France actually for profit, you need to have consent. And I think it stems from someone that took a photograph of the president of France, whose name I've totally forgotten, before Macron. But anyway, he used to go around on a scooter, and someone took his photo, and it turned out that he was on his way to meet a mistress, and it caused a bit of a rumpus. And so he changed the law in France that you can't actually publish for profit without asking for consent. But in the UK, it's much more liberal, and you don't have to ask for consent. But I suppose I would consider it more self-policing, where this is subjective, but I would never take a photograph that I would think in any context could really cause offence. It's not that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to shine a positive light on humans and human nature. There's a line, of course, and sometimes it might get close to that. But no, to answer the question directly, no, I never ask for consent. Sorry, Harry. I should also say the reason for that is that, and actually the reason why I love using the Rolleiflex is because I don't want to get a photograph of somebody looking at me taking their photograph. That's the moment's killed at that point. Which is why I don't really want to be noticed. I'm noticed, but people don't realise that I'm taking their photograph, and that's because I want to capture the truth in that moment. What is actually happening? I don't want to manipulate it or influence it or make anything change about that particular scene. I just want to capture it, whatever it was.
Yeah, I think there are different ways of working. We had a speaker a couple of weeks ago, French woman photographer, doing street photography work in Africa, Gambia, Accra. She actually asks permission, and it's a more collaborative work where the person, a complete stranger, actually poses for the photographer. But that's a different that's a different genre, right? But yet it's another way of working. Another comment, Ragana, according to official guidelines, you should take a written consent. I know, where is the spontaneity? Well, yes, quite right. I'm not up to date with the law, to be quite honest with you. I would be if I were doing street photography for sure, but it's not my thing. For commercial use, yes, exactly. And that has been in operation for some time. You need a model release, and it has to be signed, and it's quite detailed. Blah blah blah. Contact details, name, blah blah blah. It even goes into there's legislation covering people's privacy, people's rights. In effect, they become models, right? Yeah. And there might be some payment as well due.
That's quite right. Yeah, if it's for publication, then for example, if you were doing documentary photography, then you would have to get consent. Yeah, absolutely. That's obviously going to be published somewhere, almost certainly for profit in some way or another, either to you, through the commissioning channel, whatever that might be, or through your own publication through a book. But if it's just standard street photography that you're just
precisely,
you don't need consent for that.
Yeah, precisely. And I think there's also the ethical question as well. If you're going to make money out of it, profit out of it,
I agree.
They deserve something. Another comment, Ragnar, the same is here. To my understanding, I attended a course where we were warned of this. Yes, it's a thin line. Really, it's a thin line, and I think you definitely have to read up on what other circumstances. Again, it'll actually depend if you're on public space. the street, or if you're in a private space. So these are things that are, well, privacy. There's a lot of legislation for privacy, and quite rightly so. So as a photographer, you need to actually read your rights, your responsibilities, but also other people's rights and responsibilities as well. Zelga, I also think the artist has to take risks. The best work come from a little risk taking. No? Well, yes, absolutely. Risk taking and pushing the envelope, I think, are very important. Absolutely. Thank you, Zelga. Cool. Hang on now. Does Instagram count as publications?
No, it's about commercial gain. So if you are going to make commercial gain from that photograph, then you need to be careful. But if not, then because bluntly, you can't really be sued for something that you didn't benefit from, so financially. So that's kind of the line. If you're doing it for commercial benefit, then you do need to be careful. Otherwise, in the UK, this is. Other countries, it's different. And actually, Harry, you're absolutely right that if it's private land, and don't forget, train stations are private land.
Absolutely.
They're not. So taking photographs in train stations, certain facades of offices, and courtyards. Yeah, you need to be. Yeah, if you're going to do that, you need to be. But just a high street, a public pavement, then that's fine.
Yes, I think it's about knowing, and I think that's part of the awareness as a photographer. If you do whatever photography you do, really, you have to be aware of situation. It's just part of a situational awareness that, in a way, you have to do it. Being street photography, even landscape photography, although a different kind of list applies, but nonetheless, it's having that awareness of where you are, what you're doing, and with what you're dealing with.
Yeah.
Cool. So, Stuart, shall we move over to look at some of your images?
Sure.
Yes, I'll go over to the slides here. Cool. Film photography is dead. Good. What does that mean?
Oh, it's just a light-hearted thing, So people would say that film photography is dead, but in fact, the chap from Doncaster would know that saying something is dead good. Means it's actually really cool.
Oh, dead good. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
got it.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, my mistake. I'm at the very end of the slide. My fault. Sorry, not paying attention. Here we are, shooting the street with a Rolleiflex TLR. Discreet.
Yeah, that's the first bit. I guess I've already touched on that. That the if you were to try and take any of the sort of next, I don't know, I think it's about 10 shots with a conventional camera, I certainly would find that difficult to get in that close to what in different ways in the next few shots is an intimate moment. It's quite hard to do that. The Rolleiflex definitely has the benefit of being able to get in close. You're looking down, it's not invasive. It's also very quiet. The shutter, different models are quieter than others, which I can talk about maybe another time, or if people are interested, I can explain the ones that are quieter. But it's a very unobtrusive way of taking quite close shots. And I think anyone that does street photography or has studied it in any way will know that there's I've actually forgotten who said this, I think it's Robert Capa that said that if your photos aren't good enough, you're not close enough. And that's so true. And actually you see so many street photographs that are of the back of people's heads, which is fine. But to try and get the real emotion from something, you really want to try and see people's faces, and being discreet in the ways that I've already described is actually really, it's a great tool for that. So, and I think we'll probably see that over the next few slides, Harry.
Yeah, absolutely. And can I just add to that? It's what some people, I've heard it called that privileged viewpoint.
Yeah.
where you're giving the viewer a privileged viewpoint where they're there, first row, so to speak. So getting in close, rather than actually using a zoom or a telescopic lens,
Yeah.
long focal length. In a way, that is the tool. In my opinion, that is the tool of the sharpshooter. You select
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
target from
Yeah.
from a safe distance, a few hundred yards or whatever, and then snap them away. Rather than, but also that implies a certain apprehension on the part of the photographer of not getting close. And I think it's a
Yeah.
question, in my opinion, of developing different strategies in order to get close. And I think, because I've done street photography, and I think it's a question of, in my opinion, again, getting close and developing strategies where you actually get people's trust within a moment, within just a couple of seconds, because of gesture, because of eye contact, or whatever.
Yeah.
Then you can actually get in that closer.
Yeah, I think that's true, Harry. Actually, just on this particular image, to your point about sort of sniping with a telephoto lens, a large telephoto lens, which you see, fair enough. That's someone's approach, fair enough. But in this particular image, you wouldn't be able to, if you did that and you wanted to get the faces, for example, as in the way they are, you would cut out the hands. You wouldn't be able to get, because of your angle of view and the lens, you wouldn't be able to get the whole of that scene the way it is. So you'd miss out the guy smoking the cigarette, you'd miss out the lady's hands with her straight palms, and so some of the detail, emotion that comes through the gestures would be cut out of the scene completely if you were to get that close with a telephoto lens on their faces. So you miss out a load of the stuff that really makes the photo, in my view, more impactful.
Yeah, no, absolutely, definitely. It's a different kind of discourse. But hey ho, there's horses for courses.
Yeah,
But yes, you're right about the gestures. It is the expressions on the face. It is the cigarette in his hand, and they're in deep thought there, in deep concentration. There's a lot going on. So yeah. Next.
Oh yeah, I guess on the theme of being discreet, this was actually taken. My wife and I were in Florence, literally just before COVID, actually, and this chap, by all accounts, is in a bit of hot water with the police. Hence the paperwork, hence the seemingly relaxed policeman looking on, and I'm just not sure that if I was using a 35mm camera or an iPhone or anything where it was more obvious that I was, if I walked up to that scene and did this, I'm not sure that I would have captured that. Other people would have been able to. I just don't think I would be able to capture that scene, because I think I would have disturbed the scene, because I was probably, I don't know, 2 meters away from that. And that it's in front of a building in Florence called the Duomo, and so it's very easy. If you walk around with this, most people are going to think you're geeky and a tourist, which is, for a street photographer, absolutely perfect. It's the perfect smoke screen to hide behind. So you can, I can pretend that I'm taking a photograph of the Duomo, shift slightly, click that. It's very quiet, and I just think if it was a different kind of camera, I would have struggled to be that discreet.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's good. Next one.
Yeah, in fact, this is strange enough. This is also in Florence. It's in a square. I can't remember the name of the square actually, but that's probably a bit closer in here actually, with the Japanese dog, and I think it's another example for me of how being in that close, so you can get the whole thing. The chap's sort of slightly pained expression, the companionship of the dog, again the cigarette. It's that being able to get in that close, and I know we'll talk a bit later on the angle of view, but again here, what I like about the Rolleiflex, it's the combination of being able to be discreet and getting in close, but also coming from underneath and championing the subject. So the angle of view really helps to portray the subjects, even if they are looking pained, in a positive way. You know, that it's kind of, you're not patronizing the subject by coming down on them. But yeah, it's being able to get in close. It's also tricky, this, because when I look at that, you can see, would it have been a better photograph had I shifted slightly to the right and got all of his legs in? You know, I didn't need to get that part of the building where the dog's face is looking towards. And it's tricky because I guess, without being defensive, with street photography, it's even though you're fairly sort of discreet, you need to be fairly quick, you know, before.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Blink of an eye.
Something.
Yeah, blink of an eye,
you know,
quick. It's come and gone in a fraction of a second.
Yeah,
yeah. I think there's always room. There's always room for improvement. You know, like that old saying, "Oh, what's your best photograph?" Well, it's the next one. So yeah. So you know, absolutely. So yeah, could it be framed better? Well, yeah, but it was a moment. It was an instant.
Yeah.
Moving on.
Yeah, this is interesting because, again, still on the theme of discreet, children are, you know, a hot topic when it comes to street photography. And I think being discreet with a Rolleiflex is really helpful. Or being discreet, full stop, actually. So this was taken in Oxford, in just the other side of the, actually in the Bodleian.
Oh yeah.
Before the Bodleian, yeah. And you know, it's to my mind is a lovely scene of just two young kids just playing. And the importance of being discreet with this obviously isn't for the kids, it's for their parents, who they're both clearly looking at, you know, and just not being aggressively intrusive with a conventional camera, but just being very quietly. I mean, you can take that photograph, quite honestly, you could just, you know, you wouldn't really even need to look down at the camera. You'd know where the frame was and you could just take it. You know, there's no that wouldn't be a difficult thing for anybody to do. So because it's the Rolleiflex, you know, because it's and even if you just took a momentary glance, you know, into the viewfinder, nothing is disrupting that scene. You know, it's and it is important with kids. I personally, I read about Matt Stewart recently, is the sort of well-known London-based street photographer who's happy taking photos of pretty much anything, you know. And I tend to, as long as it's a positive thing, as long as you're not actually taking something that is clearly going to offend somebody or upset somebody, I don't really see a reason why you shouldn't take photos of you know, of anybody on the street. You know, we're all living here, you know, we're all doing our thing. So as long as you're not capturing it to be patronizing or humiliating or anything else, I think, you know, and children in my mind are you know, a fair game. And I think if we have 5 children, I think if, although admittedly they're growing up now, but I think if any of them were snapped by a street photographer, fine. You know, as long as it wasn't upsetting in any way, then why not? It's often actually some of the most emotion you can get from kids. This one is also in Oxford. It's again another example of being discreet. You know, I'm very close in there. This actually is also a good example. If anyone that watches this is tempted to get into using a Rolleiflex for anything, don't forget that as I clearly have forgotten here, that there are 2 lenses, hence twin lens reflex cameras, and the top lens is the lens that you look through. So when you're looking at the scene, you're looking out through the top lens, and the taking lens is the bottom one. What you need to try and remember, which I forgot here, is to tilt the camera down slightly more than you are seeing in the viewing lens, because ideally I would have got the whole of his bag there, whereas I've cut the bottom of that off inadvertently. So do you see what I mean? So actually just remember, because what you're seeing isn't quite what you're going to take. You need to just adjust it slightly.
So you don't have an indicator, because it's the parallax. It's the phenomenon is called parallax, and it's the nature of twin lens reflex cameras. It's
and rangefinders, yeah, exactly.
And rangefinder, exactly, parallax. But so you don't get an indicator with the Rolleiflex.
No, you don't get any help at all. Actually, there's no. I mean, there's a meter, but you're not bothering the meter. There's obviously no autofocus. It's very, very much a manual beat.
Right,
a very simple one. But.
Right, because in the Mamiya TLR, you do get on the lens that you look through. You actually get a level. an
Oh, do you really?
indicator, and it
Okay.
actually tells you where the cutoff is, where the crop off
Ah,
is,
okay,
because you're
that's
looking at
interesting.
slightly, well, you're
Yeah,
looking at a
okay.
different view. And and the other question is this: how? Yeah, because now I can see, because this is a recurring
Yeah,
thing. I can now I see where it's coming from. And
yeah, yeah.
another thing, what do you do about the focus? Do you focus every time you actually take a shot, or do you use a
Yeah. No,
hyperfocal, or?
that's a good question, Harry. It's one of the kind of things in the sort of tips, I suppose, albeit a very, very obvious one, is that I always use zone focusing. I mean, there's no way that you could really do street photography with a Rolleiflex and focus each scene. You just can't see it. I mean, you just can't see through because you're looking at this thing, I don't know, a couple of feet away. There's just no way that you could focus that fast enough. It would be almost impossible. So using zone focusing, where I would usually shoot at either f8 and a shutter speed of 500 or f11 or 6, depending on how sunny it is, obviously, and knowing that anywhere between a meter and 2.5 meters is going to be in focus, well enough
Yeah,
for what I'm looking to do. So this would definitely have been zone focusing,
yeah.
because you're seeing the chap, and you just want to capture.
Yeah, because it's quick, and you're
Yeah,
pre-focused, and anything within that 2 to 8 meters or
precisely.
whatever,
Yeah,
it's going to be and it's something that you can actually begin to develop a second instinct for that, judgment.
yeah.
We've got a comment here. Is that a Hasselblad camera?
No, it's a Rolleiflex.
It's a Rolleiflex 2.25 square,
Yeah. So
19.
Hasselblad actually is a lovely camera. They take amazing photographs. The only trouble with the Hasselblad is it's actually an SLR. It's not it's a single lens reflex. So you have the mirror slap, and boy does that thing slap. It's like a punch in the face
Yes,
when you
it's
take a
nice.
photograph with it. It's a fantastic quality.
Hmm.
But any hope of being discreet, which I guess is the theme we're on at the moment, you'd kiss that goodbye if you went out on the street with a Hasselblad. The moment you press the shutter, it's like a bomb going off. So yeah, you
Yeah,
wouldn't.
yes, it's
That would
very
be hard.
noisy.
Be quite hard to pretend that you haven't just taken someone's photo
Yeah,
if you went
absolutely,
out with a Hasselblad or the Bronica. Yeah.
absolutely. Moving on.
Yeah. Again, we're still on the theme of discreet, and this combines a few things. The either the mum there doesn't realise that I'm there, or just bluntly couldn't care less. Doesn't feel that their space is being invaded. It's not. If I was doing this, I think the chances are I probably would have been spotted. Um,
Yes.
and because of the zone focusing, but you obviously your eye needs to be trained, because there's no light. Well, there is a light meter, but most of them don't work particularly well. Um, it's helpful as you're walking around a street to be mindful of the changes in the light, so that you can always be sure that your settings, which there's only two, obviously, there's the aperture and the shutter speed, are correct roughly for wherever you are. So in that particular case, you can tell it's not particularly sunny, the light was okay, so it's probably, if I had to guess, f8 500. So that's already done. It's zone focused, so it's going to be in focus well enough, and you can be really fast, and very discreet. So yeah.
Absolutely. And how many frames do you normally take if you're shooting like that? Is that just the one frame of,
Oh,
or
yeah, that's a really good question, actually. Yeah, it's I tend to just do one frame. I think, like a lot of people, I would, as soon as I see something, if it's something that's still. So, for example, this afternoon I was in Oxford, and there was a little scene where there was a family in total of probably about, it was 3 adults actually, and about 4 kids, and one of the kids was off somewhere, and he'd obviously been told off, so he was away from the main group. He had his back to the main group, and he was obviously in a little bit of trouble for doing something slightly naughty. So I just wanted to get a quick, because as you said earlier, Harry, that can change like that. That scene can be gone the moment the mum walks over to comfort him. The scene's finished, because you want to capture it with the sun being slightly, a meter away from the main group, and you want to capture that kind of tense emotion in that moment. So in that case, I quickly took one, and then got in slightly closer, and took another one, just because the scene hadn't changed at all.
Sure.
But ordinarily, it's usually I usually just take one actually, and then clear off.
Cool.
Again, on the discreet, this is clearly a fairly sort of not intimate, but a kind of a close moment between two people. This again is in Oxford. It's just by the Ashmolean Museum. Very lucky with the light. As we were talking earlier, actually, Andy, how before we started, you get to know a place. I live in Oxford, and so you get to know where the sun and the light's going to be at certain times of day. And there's a certain time of day at the Ashmolean where the light still comes in, and it's lovely. But again, there's a set of steps that come up to this particular scene, and I think it would have been pretty difficult to capture that with a normal camera, being that if the moment I held it up to my face, I think the lady in the picture would definitely have seen me. Whereas with the Rolleiflex, I'm not looking at her. And when you're looking down at something, most people just think you're fiddling about with it. They don't actually realise you're pressing the shutter. They just think that you're messing around with something that you probably don't understand. There's and that actually, just on that, in case I forget, I bought this a while ago. I just saw it for sale in a charity shop actually, and it's a Rolleiflex. It's an old Rolleiflex manual.
Let me just change the screen for a minute, then we can get a better view. There.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it's actually a kind of an original Rolleiflex guide.
Okay.
And I carry around with me in my pocket sometimes, because you really want people to think that, if people think I really don't have the first idea what I'm doing with this camera, that's a great thing for people to think.
Yep.
If I'm just fiddling around. So if there's a scene that I think might be a little bit edgy, then I might get this out, just to maybe give the impression that I'm trying to work out how to use this thing as I'm looking down, so you can get in even closer actually when a man reaches for the manual, he knows he's in a bad place.
This is dissimulation as art form and performance.
Yeah. And actually, just while we've got the camera like this, Harry, I mentioned this now. I wasn't going to mention it towards the end in terms of the tips, but most of them I've actually said now.
Go ahead.
One of the tips that can be really useful if anyone's interested in using a Rolleiflex for street photography is that ordinarily the way this works is that this is the film wind on, then that cocks the shutter, and then there's the shutter button there. So you can probably hear it's very quiet. One of the things that can be quite useful is if I'm looking to take the photograph here, of me right now, then I'd obviously have to wind the camera on and take it. So if I was taking a photograph, and I know the people know that I'm there, they've seen it, they may have even commented out, it's an interesting camera, I want the scene to go back to what it was, then take their picture. But most people, strange enough, think that this is an 8mm movie camera. They don't realise it's a still, and why would they? I mean, no one uses these things these days. So having taken the photo, what you can then do is just shift slightly and pretend that was actually the photo. Does that make sense? So you can you're actually taking a bit of movie.
Yeah.
So you think, did he just take my photograph? And you can then turn sideways and just move you're actually winding the film on, but it gives the impression of actually doing what they think you're doing, which is taking some movie footage. It's because the last thing I would want is for me to have captured someone's photo, leave the scene, and then be upset about that. That's not at that point I have singular.
Yeah, it kind of defeats the purpose.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yes.
That's not right. I don't have a right to go and ruin someone's day. That's not it. But that can be quite a nice way to leave a different kind of impression.
Absolutely.
Sorry.
No, not at all. No, absolutely fine.
Oh yeah, this is an interesting one actually. So this couple, they're some reasonably well known in Oxford actually. They're unusual in that it's a man and a woman, and they always wear identical clothes. I think they are. I'm grappling for the right words here. They're sort of semi-homeless, which makes it more unusual. They have perfectly polished shoes. They're fairly grubby. They wear identical clothes, and they stay often in a shelter. But they're fascinating from a street photography perspective, without being voyeuristic. They are really interesting. Now, if I was to try and take, again, still on the theme of discreet, Harry, if I was to try and take this photo, because they're obviously walking past me, I can see them walking up. This is Cornmarket Street in Oxford. I can see them walking towards me, and I just want to stand there and look down and get my settings right, and then wait for them to walk into view and press the shutter. And that's that. If it's the moment they walk past me, and I've seen this a lot actually, when I also use a Leica 35mm sometimes. The moment I would have done this, guaranteed they'd have walked away or walked behind me. They'd have either walked away because they'd be upset that I'm taking a picture, or they walk behind me because they're thinking they're about to walk into my picture. And of course, that's exactly what I want them to do. Whereas with a Rolleiflex, you can just stay looking down and you can time the moment perfectly without causing any offense to anybody. So yeah, that's and that is actually for people that are interested in film itself. That I usually use this stuff, Ilford HP5, standard 120.
Let me go
film.
back.
Oh yes, sorry, Harry. Yeah, it's just normal Ilford HP5.
Yeah, 120 roll film.
120. Yeah. Just that photograph that you flashed up there was actually taken using a different kind of film called street pan, which was commissioned by a chap who goes by the name of Japan Camera Hunter. He's an English chap. I've forgotten his real name now, but he commissioned this particular film to be very, very grainy and have very, very high contrast, which you can sort of see in
yes,
that
that's quite evident. Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's his work, not mine, to create that effect.
Absolutely. Yeah, which goes well with street photography, absolutely. Yeah. But one thing, did the framing of the CCTV camera and all the security there, was that deliberate or was that random?
Totally random. I didn't notice you just mentioned actually, and it's funny actually when I talk to my wife about some of my, she will see. My wife's an artist, so she will see things in my photos, and she'll pay me compliments that are totally, unjustified, because that was a total accident that the camera's there. But I guess you're right. It definitely adds to it. I hadn't even noticed that. That's pure fluke.
Yes, absolutely. It's and I think that's the beauty of the random elements, because to me it's the people, it's a Starbucks, it's Vodafone, and it's the architecture in the background, the from modernist to kind of Victorian. Mock Gothic. Oh, we've got a comment or question from Philip. I could be wrong, but I think I read an article on that couple. Are they artists and that's part of their shtick? I think you might be thinking of, I don't know about Oxford, but I do know about East London, Gilbert and George, the photographers, who dress in a very, very similar way, usually in tweeds, look like kind of 19th century thing. Yeah, usually in tweeds, kind of. Because when you mentioned that, thank you, Philip, for that comment. When you said that, that's what came to my mind. However, Philip, you may well be right. It might be another couple of artists.
Yeah.
Moving on. Cool.
So again, still on the discreet theme, being able to get in close without disrupting the scene. I suppose it's probably also worth mentioning that with things like this again is in Oxford, but that would have been taken very quickly because the camera's always obviously around your neck, and you can just. There's some steps that go down before this particular set of benches and cafe tables. It's very easy just to quickly stop and click. It's very quiet. So, it's kind of a repeating theme here, Harry, but it would have been difficult for me to have taken that. I think the lady that's reading the newspaper there, I think in her peripheral vision, if the moment I do this, she's noticed it, but actually because I don't change anything, I'm just walking down the steps, I can just tilt the camera, take the picture, and that's that. It really is a great tool inobtrusive,
really absolutely. Absolutely.
I think the chap that's fast asleep might have taken more than some more waking up. I don't think he'd have noticed me for a while, but he looks like he's completely conked out. But
I like the kind of windy zigzag line that the people actually make that take us into back into the center of the photograph.
Yeah, in
There's
the
that
picture,
windy line.
I think there's a poster you can see obviously there as well.
Yeah,
That's got some stuff on it, which is quite interesting. Just complements things quite nicely.
absolutely. A comment from Zelga. Yes, you're thinking of G and
Ah,
George. Yes, Gilbert and George. That's right. Yes, yes. I used to live not far away from them actually. So yeah, moving on.
very good.
Thank you, Zelga.
I, this is actually the first photograph I took that I was happy with. It's actually a Rolleicord. This one, it was the kind of more entry level Rolleiflex camera, a Rolleicord 5B. Again, in Oxford. It would have been taken pretty quickly because I was new to the whole thing at this point. This is quite a few years ago. But it's the first one I remember taking where I looked at it afterwards and I could just see something going on between the two of them. You know, the detail around her hand being held out. He's not taking her hand. He's looking away. She's looking toward. You know, has she just dumped him? You know, are they brother and sister? And they've just who knows? You know, there's a story there somewhere.
Yes.
And I just found it quite. I found it interesting, and it made me want to do more of it, quite frankly. So, but again, very easy to walk into that scene with the Rolleiflex and just snap the picture and then move away, and you know, no harm done really. So
Absolutely. Yes, it's that inconclusive narrative. There's a narrative going on there, but we're not quite sure what it is. And in a way, it's that creating that, in a way, it's a sort of conundrum. What is going on? And it's all the signs and it's the body language of each in this case that in a way creates something, what is going on? And in a way, it's trying to work it out.
I do remember that this couple were French. And my French is kind of intermediate at best. And I remember they were speaking French to each other very, very quickly. So I couldn't, I couldn't. No, like you, I have absolutely no idea exactly what's going on there. But it's nice. It does suggest something's afoot.
Absolutely. Oops, sorry, my mistake.
Oh yeah, this is probably one of the themes. Which does make me chuckle actually. I see quite a lot of men with empty pushchairs and prams, you know, and of course it begs the question, you know, well, where exactly is your baby? So you're happily reading your book in the sunshine, and now obviously the baby hasn't been stolen. The baby's probably being held by the mother, you know, just out of view. But I've probably got half a dozen pictures similar to this, but this is the first one that I took in that sort of regard.
Right.
And again, you know, same thing really. It's just very easy just to walk up, take the picture, you know, nothing. I'm not moving physically anything really, you know, the camera's, I'm just looking down. So if any, you know, there's no sense of disrupting that scene. It's just very straightforward to just to wander up and snap that.
Absolutely. I'll move on. Angle of view, which is the next.
Yeah, just a handful of these, Harry, actually. I think it's because it's you're obviously taking it essentially just above waist level. You can it just naturally, in my view, champions the subject. You know, you're never looking down and patronizing, and it's also a different angle of view to the one that you normally look at the street through. So obviously we normally look at eye level, and you would normally take a photograph obviously at eye level, unless you're shooting from the hip, which of course can be done, but that's a bit more hit and miss. With the Rolleiflex, just by dint of the fact you're using a Rolleiflex, you are going to get that different angle of view. So, I just like the fact it just to my eye, it results in a positive context for the subject. So
yeah, absolutely. It's that kind of social realist perspective, always making the subject almost slightly larger than life.
Yeah, and it'd be hard to do that, you know.
And it's looking up at them, not looking down at them. So
that's precisely that, and that's what I like actually. And you know, like, you probably realise, but it's the camera that's doing all of this, not me. You know, it's the fact that the camera is at that angle.
But it emphasises that kind of perspective. It elevates the individual, which is good, which is excellent.
Which of course you can do. You know, if you to get that image of the same angle, of course I could crouch down and then with a and then take the photo, but it's pretty impossible to do that without disrupting the scene. You know, if I crouch down and take this particular picture, the guy's bound to notice me. You know, it's kind of, whereas if the camera's already at that angle, then you're not disrupting anything. You know, critical for me in this image is the expression on the chap's face, which looks slightly defeated. You know, and the sign "road closed ahead." The working sign has been leaning against the wall, so work for the day stopped. You know, it sort of suggests a bit of a thoughtful, reflective moment, which you just don't want to disturb. You know, you want to leave that as it is. You don't want to do anything that's going to trigger a change in that.
Absolutely, yes. In a way, you want to kind of, it's almost like filming or photographing nature.
I should say this one.
Just let it
right,
be.
Actually. Yeah, no, you're right. It's exactly it. You just want to be a silent bystander and just observe the thing, just very subtly, silently, just snap it and then clear off.
Yeah, witness, observer. This is almost what David Attenborough has been doing for decades and decades.
No, I guess so.
It?
No, exactly. So this one was actually in New York. It wasn't, so sort of full disclosure here, Harry, it wasn't until I actually popped this one on the slide deck and sent it over to you that I realised I saw those two one-way signs, which is exactly where that chap is looking. I mean, that was a pure fluke. I didn't even notice them.
Yes,
which I suppose is probably quite a nice part of the photo. I didn't even. It was his demeanour, his face, and the kind of. But again, the angle of view, to me, you know, the look on his face is a look of strength. I don't know whether he's just read something that's made him think, or whether something's happened in the distance that's made him look over there. But championing that from the bottom up, to me, just really helps to create that positive context.
Absolutely. Then and there's the star and stripes in the reflection of it. Looks like a window reflection.
Oh gosh,
or maybe in the window. I'm not sure if it's a reflection in the window or inside the shop. But anyway, there's the star and stripes. Yes. So which immediately locates it.
Again, this is all on the angle of view. The people observing this chap, you know, drawing back in Oxford now, you know, scratch record, Harry. But you know, without the natural angle of that Rolleiflex, the scene would have been disturbed. So, which you don't want to do. You know, it's lovely just seeing those people looking, and you just desperately want to know what exactly is it he's drawing.
It reminds me of a zoo as well. You know, looking at the. Yeah,
you're right.
Certainly the cage, the bars certainly kind of remind me of that, of the zoo, the inside and the outside.
Which I think is a good segue onto the next one. Actually, I think the next one might be. Oh no, it's one after.
Yeah.
But and this is obviously I'm in very close here, and this is probably a good example of both of the things you've talked about, being discreet and having that angle of view that goes from the upwards into the subject, and she just it just portrays her in such a strong positive light. You know, there's no, if that was at eye level, it would have been a very, very different feel to it. So being able to get in close, this is by a bus stop in Oxford, and again, not be disturbing, that is helpful.
Excellent. Square format.
Yeah, that's the third of the three themes and the reasons that I really like using the Rolleiflex. It works particularly well where there is some form of symmetry, and I think we've just got a couple of examples of this. So the symmetry here is the first two bits is very obvious. You know, the two chaps there with their legs sort of positioned very similarly, and you've got the third chap over to the right that's he's obviously sitting up, but it's kind of a symmetry there with his legs. So the square format, I really like the square format. I know it's kind of, I think people are polarized about it. Some people prefer what is the more natural shape of the sort of 35mm. I think it's 6x9 or whatever it is that we normally see throughout our eyes. You know, that's what we normally see. For whatever reason, I just really like the square format. Maybe because it's not how we naturally see things, that it just jolts you into slightly different.
I think you're quite right. It actually has different. It poses a kind of different dynamic, and in terms of framing and composition, it's more challenging. It's easier to frame and compose within that rectangular 1 by 1.5, which is the kind of perspective of, or which is the aspect ratio of the golden mean, 1.618, or close enough. However, the square format poses a challenging in composition, trying to actually do something that is either symmetrical or something that is asymmetrical, but somehow is well balanced, like here.
It's interesting because I can imagine with your work, Harry, the landscape photography in square format. I can't. That would be very difficult to make that work. But with street stuff, I don't know. Maybe it's because it's kind of there's a lot of candid portraiture that goes on in the street, and for some reason, I don't know, it just seems to work.
I would say that the same applies to landscape, because sometimes I do shoot with a medium format. I'm beginning to shoot more with a medium format.
Oh wow, okay.
Mamiya.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, which is behind on the shelf, actually behind me.
Okay, I can see it. Yeah, okay, yeah, very good.
And so yeah, and the same principle applies, and actually, because that's the challenge of actually creating something that isn't symmetrical, for me at least. It's something that is asymmetrical, and I think for landscape, Faye Godwin, British landscape photographer. Underrated, terribly underrated, which is a shame. I think she's there. She's one of the great British landscape photographers of the 20th century. She was way ahead of her time, and she actually used a Hasselblad. So it's going back to Dragana's question. Yeah, she used a Hasselblad, and for landscape, really good stuff.
So I think this is the last image, Harry. I think again on the square format, to my eye, that just the symmetry, the bars, the angles, it just seems to work. I just like what the Rolleiflex does with the square format. Of course, it doesn't have. It's not specific to a Rolleiflex. Of course, you can take square format on other things. You can either set a normal digital camera to do square format, or your iPhone to do square format, or use a Hasselblad or a Bronica or lots of anything. But the square format that comes naturally with the Rolleiflex, to me, just works really well. On the street. I think it's great.
Yeah, no, I think it's excellent. Quality.
Oh, sorry, quality. I forgot. But I don't know, we're running against the clock here, so I'll keep this fairly quick.
Yeah, we're going slightly over time, folks, but we've just got the last 4 slides to actually and do ask questions. If you have any comments, now is your opportunity.
Fabulous. So this wasn't meant to be a quality in terms of good and bad quality. It was more the quality of film and the Rolleiflex lenses. I just love what they do. That combination, just the atmosphere, to use one of my wife's words. Is that you get. This is in Florence actually, and just that lovely soft. Just the light and the lady selling the flowers, reading them. I love the feel of that the film and the Rolleiflex lenses. So there's just a handful of snaps here, Harry, that hopefully sort of in differing ways actually just show the quality of the lens and the film combination of the Rolleiflex.
There's something that's rather cinematic and dramatic, almost like a stage lighting here going on.
Yeah,
like that key light on the woman reading the newspaper.
Just on that one, actually, Harry, in terms of tips and tricks, when I started, I used one of these little Voigtlander light meter things, which are super useful.
Let me hold it up again.
Yeah. It's just got aperture and shutter speed and film speed on it, and you can just press a little button at the back here, and it just gives you the normal kind of green or red lights on either side. But it's very discreet.
So it's a little light meter in effect.
It's a little light meter. It runs on a couple of cheap batteries. But the reason I was mentioning that is that photograph. Luckily, my eyes have subsequently got sort of pretty zoned into light. I always use the same film, so that obviously really helps in terms of the film speed and the kind of. Or actually, generally, apart from the street pan stuff that I experimented with, but that photograph that we were just on there, the one in Florence of the lady selling the flowers. If people again want to get into Rolleiflex and they haven't, they're used to using a modern camera that's going to do all of the autofocus, all of the auto exposure, and so on and so on. It does take a bit of time to get used to seeing light and knowing what that's going to be, and because it happens so quickly on the street, you do really need to get that knack of knowing what the light, reading the light yourself, basically.
Absolutely, and I think it's that awareness, and in a way, you know what, Stuart, it's going back to what it used to be, what photography used to be. It's all going back to its origin, not just using film, but also moving away, weaning oneself off the auto and semi-auto and actually going into the manual, where you begin to see in a different way. And I think this is the beauty of using, for me, this is always the beauty of using manual. Yes, you might make mistakes, but hey, you learn. And you're constantly learning. And I think one of the things that you absolutely say is that judging and evaluating and being able to make a very, very fine call or judgment on the quality of the light and shadow. And I think this is where the creative and artistic side of photography comes into being. It's not what the camera or the CCD chip or the CPU unit says it is. Photography, in my opinion, I'm sure you will share this, is photography is up here. It's an intellectual process. It's in the mind. It's not in the camera.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I would also say that it looks quite an unwieldy beast, a Rolleiflex. So the twin-lens reflex camera can look a bit, but it's so simple. It's such an easy camera to use. There's only really, if you zone focus on the street, which you really need to do, so you just set that anyway. There's only two things to change. There's obviously just the aperture and the shutter speed. Yeah. And that's it. So it's actually remarkably straightforward.
That's how simple it is, and I think that's the beauty of it. And in a way, that leaves you to actually be the creative in terms of using your judgment and creative input as an individual, as an author. And I think, for landscapes, I do the same. I'm shooting at f11. Right, I'm using the hyperfocal distance, so everything between 3 meters and optical infinity is in focus. I don't faff about with the focus. I just check that the focus ring hasn't moved while I've been from one location to the other. Yeah. And I just check that, yes, it is there, it is in the right position, and then I just forget about the focus. For me, everything is I invest my time, my intellect, my creativity in framing, composition, waiting for the light. So in a way, this is the crossover between your style and my style. That although they're very different genres, one with people, the other with almost no people at all, there's that crossover, there's that intersection, and I think this is the creative side of photography.
I agree.
We've got a comment just come in. Ingrid, it's feeling inspired to try square format and to continue trying street photography. Gave it a try for the first time last week. Oof, not easy. And on an iPhone. That would be challenging, I would say.
Yeah, it's tricky. It's funny with the iPhone, isn't it? Because there was a time, 10 years ago, where if you were using an iPhone, people wouldn't have really realised you were taking their photograph. Whereas now the opposite's true. I think the moment you either do this, or you do this, people know what's happening. Whereas, so on that, Ingrid, if you can borrow a Rolleiflex or any kind of twin lens reflex camera, try it. It's really, it definitely is liberating for street photography. It's so much easier using one of these than any other kind of conventional camera.
Absolutely.
Am I right? Is Ingrid in Sweden, Harry? Have I got that right?
Yes, okay. That's correct. Yes.
I only mentioned that because I know there's a chap starting a hire service to hire out medium format cameras, including Rolleiflexes, but he's London based, so that's of no use, unfortunately, in Sweden. But hopefully, if you can, find someone that will lend you one to try, you'll see it's much easier than any other, in my view, any other camera.
Yeah, I would agree. I think you're absolutely right. That's very sound advice. Thank you, Stuart. Ingrid, again, I have another camera that I'm trying to gain courage to use. Oh, you must. What do you tell us? What camera is it? Definitely. Give it a whirl. I say, give it a whirl, definitely.
Yeah. Oh, and also, actually, just on that, it's really natural to be apprehensive when you first start doing street photography, because you just think, any combination of someone's going to get really upset with me, they've noticed me, they're going to punch me in the face. There's a whole list of things that you think, but none of them really. Particularly when you're starting, I would really implore you to seek out happy things, seek out happy moments. Someone sharing an ice cream, so don't go for the edgy stuff to start with, and take the photo and actually make yourself be seen, so and just take it and just say, that just looks so lovely. Every time, just say the same thing. That just looked lovely. You look so happy together. It's wonderful. Isn't that lovely? Just the first time you press the shutter and you just say to someone, oh, that looks so lovely. You look so great. Their face beams, you've made their day, and then at that point, wow, you can do this.
Yeah,
you really can do this. And
I think that's such good advice, Stuart. It's about being positive. And know what? It's that motto: I see beauty everywhere.
Yeah.
And without being silly or over romanticized about it, but actually it's taking that positivist attitude and in a way elevating. And I think that gives you courage as well. Another comment, Swedes are sensitive to this, but I will continue. Yes, that's a challenging. Again, this is a cultural thing. I mean, different cultures will have different awareness of private space, privacy, and so on and so forth. It's not the same. Some people, I think here across Europe, I think we're ultra aware. Other places, they're not, so they're more relaxed, more laid back.
Well, and on that, maybe another approach would be to start, despite what I said earlier, to start by taking the backs of people. I think it was Saul Leiter that said he can read more about someone's character from the back of the head than the front. So there's nothing wrong with that. I personally like to do something different, but if in Sweden it's you need to be more sensitive to those things, then or even do it further away.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You adapt and you go with the flow. Definitely.
Definitely do it.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Must.
So again, this is on the quality of the film and the lens from the Rolleiflex. I just love the combination of what the lens and the film does. It's just a different one here with water involved and the shimmering and soft.
And I love that, exactly what you were about to say, I guess, that soft focus in the background, sort of beyond in the water, the reflection on the water, the scintillating reflection on the water, and the leaves and the trees in the background. It's actually beautiful. It's so subtle, and the sharpness at the front.
Yeah. And again, a very different kind of shot, but I tried to select a handful of things, Harry, that would show the different qualities actually of the lens and the film combination together. So this the previous one was actually in the US, but this is back in Oxford now, and the lovely dynamic range from real whites to real blacks and everything in between, pretty much.
Yes, absolutely.
And just a lovely sun's out, nice and sharp. It's it's a lovely set of qualities that you get with the film.
Yeah, that's so true. Yes, you get from the pure white to the blacks with details, and that's beautiful tonal range. It's excellent. Absolutely. Do you use a coloured filter at all for skies?
Oh, it's funny you say that, actually, because I do sometimes. And when I was out today, when I got back, I completely forgot, because I meant to try it today. I haven't used it for a while because you're obviously coming through the sort of darker months. So the answer is I do sometimes, but carelessly. So I do need to be a bit more organised with that, because it does. Yeah, it can be lovely, actually. Yeah, or as you will know.
Yeah, you get a greater tonal range with a yellow green. You get you increase the greys, and you darken the blue.
Yeah, so I should do that more, particularly as we're coming towards the sunnier months now. I should
absolutely. Give it a try.
Yeah. That's helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Excellent. Street scene.
Just the qualities that you get from the film and the lens with things like this. It's just lovely. This was in Portugal, actually.
Okay.
Just similar, I suppose, to Oxford in in the stone, you know, and the way the light plays off that. But yeah, it's just and this is actually, to my eye, it's another good example of the square format working really well.
Yes.
For street photography, you know, just with the way the lines of the shot work.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yes. I think you've actually mastered the composition within square format, and I think many people would. In principle, it seems challenging, but you've actually mastered it. It's good because you're creating that asymmetrical sort of composition that has a depth. But then again, symmetry isn't a bad thing. I mean, symmetry is also very, very. But it's a question of actually using it and in a way controlling it rather than it controlling you.
Yeah.
Here we go.
There we go.
Film photography is dead good. Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. So there we are. So we're having a little deja vu. Folks, any last questions? Sorry, we've gone a bit over time, but this has been really interesting. Stuart, thank you so much for sharing some gems there with us. And thank you for the audience for participating with comments and questions. That was great. So if you have any final comments, this is your time. Stuart, excellent. So what are you doing? Let me just change the scene here. What's your immediate work? What are you working on at the moment? Where do you see things progressing here now that spring is here?
Yeah, honest answer, more of the same. Actually, it's before COVID, I was quite. I was more of a hunter with street photography. You know, I'd go out and really try and sort of. Really search out the thing and get frustrated if I would come back without finding the shot. But for whatever reason, having the time off, the enforced time off, you know, through COVID, it's now, when I go out now, it's much more about just capturing whatever's there today. You know, what was there today, and I don't get frustrated anymore. So it's now, it's more of the same. Just a lot of it is in Oxford. We're due to go to Dublin, my wife and I, in about 4 or 5 weeks' time. So I'm looking forward to shooting some stuff there for the first time. But more of the same, just capturing whatever's out there and really enjoying it.
Terrific. A comment from Philip. Enjoyed that, folks. Good stuff. Philip, thank you so much. That was really, really good. Excellent. Cool. Okay, well, I think on that high note, Stuart, thank you so much for taking part in conversation. This is great. I think you've given some pearls of wisdom there. Definitely.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you very much, Harry. Lovely to chat.
That's terrific. So did I. Thank you so much. We'll be in touch. And we'll definitely be in touch. And it would be great to see how your work progresses, to actually see future work.
That's great. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Excellent. Okay, folks, I hope you enjoyed that. Sorry we went a bit over time, but hey-ho, the nature of the beast. So there you go. As I said, subscribe to YouTube or follow me on Eventbrite or Instagram, and we'll have new speakers towards the end of this month or very early in the next. And Dragana comment. Thanks, guys. You're very welcome, Dragana. My pleasure. Thank you. And thank you all for being here. That's excellent. Okay. And now I'll say goodbye. Have a great week ahead. Thank you so much. Bye for now.